That just really brought me right back to that. So wanted to share. Thank you, Angus and Rohini. Hop on
Hello.
in.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you, Isla. So lovely to be here with everybody. And I've just enjoyed listening to everyone this morning. It's, each person that has shared has really touched my heart and helped me settle into this yummy feeling of love, wisdom, whatever we're calling it today. And Linda, I don't know if Linda Pettit's still here, but I wanted to thank you for the addition of the two to the title. I realized that grammar or language is so important. I think that really captures the fact that we are awakening to the wisdom that is always there and that it doesn't ever go anywhere else. And when I was also thinking about the title before I was realizing that the two could go in there this morning, I was realizing that, and Isla, you said that it was one of my suggestions, and I realized how lofty it sounded when I was thinking about it today. And what was present for me is to remind myself and to remind all of us how ordinary it is. And when Shannon shared earlier this morning and, so beautifully sharing from his heart and overflowing with love, to me, it was just a reminder of just how that overflow is available in any moment, whether we can consciously feel it or not. And I just want to say thank you, Shannon, for helping bring us all together. And I really acknowledge you for your vulnerability and willingness to receive. And I recognize that it's such a gift to be on the giving side and and such a demonstration of the power of vulnerability to be open to receiving in this way. So thank you for modeling that to us. And so back to the ordinary, the story that came forward for me to share when I was thinking about how ordinary wisdom is a story from when I was 13 years old. So a teenager, just finished 8th grade, summer is before me. And it's those summers where, they seem endless and full of possibility and there's nothing to do. And it's 1980. There's very little adult supervision going on during the day, at least in those summers where you could just do whatever you wanted and hang out with friends. And we had moved in the middle of my 8th grade year from the suburbs of Montreal to the west coast of Canada. And so from the West Island, which is fairly cosmopolitan, we end up living in this tiny little town on Vancouver Island with 5,000 people. And so it was a big adjustment, and I was just starting to make friends. And I got invited to sleep over at this girl's house who was a year older, like, ninth grade, I think. And it was like a really big deal that I got invited to stay at her house. And I asked my mom, and it was a really big deal that my mom said yes. She was pretty strict, as you will hear. And so my mom said to me, yes, you can stay at Kathy's house. And I want you to call me at 9 p.m. and just let me know that you're there, that you're, settled for the night. That's all you need to do is call me and I'll come get you in the morning. I'm like, yes. So it's the evening. It's probably 8 p.m. at Kathy's house. And Kathy's parents have very different, I actually don't even remember meeting her parents, but they seem to have very different rules than my mom had. And so she says to me at 8 p.m., oh, these boys want to meet us at the baseball park. Let's go. And it's 8 p.m. And there's this very loud, clear, I don't know if it was a voice, but knowing within me that said, call your mom. Call your mom. It's an hour early. Just call your mom and tell her you're in for the night and then go to the baseball park. Did I call my mom? No, I did not call my mom. I think I overrode it. It's an hour early. Shouldn't call her at 8. It'll be embarrassing to tell Kathy I need to call my mom before we go to, like, all of that intellectual noise that I'm sure we can all recognize. But at 13, before I've done any spiritual practice, before I have, you know, didn't even grow up with religion, I have this experience of inner knowing that I remember to this day. And so off we go to the baseball park. And there's this boy there that I really liked. And so I met up with Jay, and we're hanging out at the baseball park, canoodling, a little bit of kissing going on, might have been a little beer involved. And by now it's not 8 o'clock, it's 10 o'clock at night. And it's dark. And there's this guy who comes running. I don't even know who this guy was. I do remember who he was. He was like a 12th grader. He's like running down the street to the baseball park. Rohini, Rohini. And I'm like, what? So I'm like, what? He goes, your mom's called the police. They're looking for you. And I'm like, I had another moment where that inner knowing came up. And it was a fork in the road. And I remember one of them was saying, run. And the other said, go home with Jim and let him call your mom. And that time I did listen to my wisdom. And so I went home with Jim and he called my mom. And, or I don't know how, because there was no cell phone. Somehow we got a hold of my mom. The police didn't find me that night. And she was so mad. Like, I mean, and life was tough for her. My stepdad was very ill. He actually died the following year. So he was terminally ill. And so, you know, I have a lot of compassion for some of the headaches that it caused her now as a teenager. But she's like, you're grounded for the entire summer. And that summer I was grounded, but I still managed to get myself in trouble. But the thing from that is that I will never forget. Like, it was even great that she was so mad, because I think it helped me remember. I will never forget that knowing that was so clear. And I can't know this because my mom's pretty intuitive, but my sense was I probably could have pulled the wool over her eyes if I called her at 8 and just said, oh, we're in for the night, and pretended I didn't realize that I was supposed to call at 9 and not 8. So that I had that feedback, right? I had that inner feedback, but it wasn't that it was wrong that I didn't listen to it. It's just part of the learning, because I can still go through life and not listen to that feedback. But I think what's so helpful is to recognize how ordinary it is and how available it is, and how it is about us waking up to it and recognizing it for what it is. Because it became so much easier for me to respect it after that experience, because there was a big impact that I got from not listening to it. And it helped me to know it when it shows up. And I remember later on, probably, I don't know, my 20s or so, I can't remember when the book came out, Gavin de Becker wrote a book, The Gift of Fear. And in that book, he was talking about the research that he had done with women who'd been victims of violent crime, and how every single woman that he interviewed as part of his research had a moment of questioning. Should I go in that elevator? Maybe I, like, there was some kind of knowing that they didn't listen to. And so it's that invitation for all of us to see what helps us to respect and honor that, even when it's uncomfortable. And what Gavin de Becker was saying is that often for women, it's our social conditioning that has us not want to be rude, has us not want to look like, you know, for example, oh, it looks rude if I don't step into this elevator, even though it doesn't feel like I should. I'm going to do it because I don't want to be rude. And so that was another reminder of the importance of being able to discern and to honor. And I think the more that we honor that knowing within ourselves, the easier it gets to listen to it and hear it. And we often, like, I just would invite everyone this moment to just think of a time that you can remember in your life where you recognize that knowing showing up for you, whether you listen to it or not, just to help anchor and recognize how it shows up for you. And some people feel it as a sensation. Some people might hear it as a, well, like I hear Angus is hearing George Pransky in his head. It's like it can show up in all kinds of forms. and at different times, I'm sure. And that it's not lofty, right? And I love expansive spiritual experiences and consciousness raising experience. Like I love all of that and they're beautiful. And I also love the ordinary reminders of common sense that are there day to day, moment to moment. And one of the things that I find, like in that situation when I was 13, my intellect overrode that call your mom. Really simple, common sense. Call your mom, Rohini. Often when we're guided by that knowing, it's something that's just so clear. It's just a yes. Like I remember when I met Angus, it's like ding, yes. That was a big yes. I remember um, after the birth of our second daughter, I knew something was wrong. And the doctors were telling me everything was fine. And I knew something was wrong. And thankfully I listened because that's made a big difference in my life. And so there are these times where we just know and we listen and it's clear. So those are the easy times. Might not be an easy situation, but we're clear. The times where it can be more challenging, I think, is what Angus was talking about, where our conditioning and our intellect get really scared by what that knowing is inviting us to. And it can be confusing because it can feel really uncomfortable. And that discomfort, we can feel like, oh, well, that must mean that I shouldn't do that. And so I think it's really important to be able to make that distinction between what's a real yes from your heart, from your soul, from that knowing within yourself. And you've just got some thinking about it that feels really uncomfortable versus what's a no. And I know for me, that's something that I've really had to be willing to step into the discomfort because I want to say yes to that part of myself. And, Angus talked about how Shannon helped us with the Soul Centered series, the 6-month program we did a few years back. And that was one of those situations where I had a big yes inside of me about bringing these amazing teachers to Santa Monica and sharing their teachings with our community here. And that felt like a really big yes. And I had a lot of noise in my head about how I couldn't do that and how it would be a lot of money and blah, 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 all of that. But I just knew that I didn't want to say no to that part of myself. And so what I said was okay, this feels really outside of my comfort zone, but it does feel like it's coming from that knowing inside of me. So what if I just take the next step? And I'll see what happens when I take the next step. And that's how that program came into being. Just being willing to take the next small baby step. At USM, they would say a 3-foot toss, and listen to the feedback and listen to see if the yes was still there. And, you know, that to me is a way to be gentle and kind with myself on this journey of waking up to wisdom, of discerning wisdom from conditioning, and doing it in a way that is still kind and gentle with myself. And it happened in the opposite direction, I think probably last year, where Angus, in his wisdom, was saying, I really think we need to slow down, make some changes. And I was really enjoying a lot of the programs that we were running, and it felt like everything was going full steam ahead. But when I listened to him, I realized like, oh, that actually feels really good to think about getting quiet and having more spaciousness and just really slowing down and simplifying a lot our lives. And my head was like, but, and this wasn't even a, oh, but I don't like this. It was like, I love this. I want to keep doing this. And so I had to again discern like what's what's the yes inside of me? What is that space of love inviting me into? And then I realized that it was a little scary for me to slow down, or maybe a lot scary. And I was helped along by having COVID and then getting bronchitis for about 6 or 7 months afterwards. And that was after we'd had this conversation. But I really see the blessing in not having a choice. So maybe I wasn't so good at listening to my wisdom because my physical body said, you're going to really have to slow down. But again, it's, I think, another pointer to there isn't a wrong step. Like even when we don't listen to our wisdom, that's part of the learning curve. It's not a mistake. It's us where we're at in our level of understanding in that moment. And that's exactly where we need to be. And that we can trust the unfolding of life that's happening through us and for us, whatever life might be showing us. And I think that Shannon has been such an incredibly inspiring example of that, of continuing to choose love, continuing to be of service from a place of giving from the overflow and being willing to receive. And that has been, I think, one of the areas where it's been harder for me to allow myself to let myself receive, let myself slow down, let myself receive the rest, the nourishment, the quiet. And now that I'm feeling great and healthy, I don't want to change a thing about the slowing down piece. I think that has been really life-changing for me, that I was able to see how on some level my worth was still attached to the doing, and that the deepening of trust and knowing that my beingness is like, the worth is not a thing. That's an idea, it's a concept. And that I don't need to be identified with that concept. And that when I'm not identified with it, what a pressure release that is, to relax into just being myself in this moment, which is very human and ordinary. And I grew up as an only child, and a lot of that, those younger years were with my mom, just my mom and I. And of course, I was really special to her, and we have a really close relationship, but I can see how I internalized that special as a standard or an idea that was connected to me being lovable, me being worthy, me being good enough. And I worked really hard in life to try and be special. Like, I graduated top of my, I mean, it was a very small rural high school, but I graduated top of my high school. You know, I worked hard to be the top. And then when I went to college, and ever since I was a little girl, like, my mom said that she asked me when I was about 6 years old what I wanted to be when I grew up. And she said she was on a train. And I said, I want to be a pathologist. And she said, the woman sitting across from the train, like, looked like, what is she saying? And my mom's like, oh, she obviously doesn't know what that is. She said, well, what is that? What does a pathologist do? I said, oh, they cut up dead people to find out why they died. And so I'd always wanted to be a doctor and was interested in all things medical. And I get to college and I hit my second year of pre-med class. And my first year of college, I get straight A's. And my second year of college, I start dating and, you know, having fun. And these classes of science, of organic chemistry, I think it was really differential calculus that got me. I'm like, I don't understand this. Like, I can't figure this out. And I didn't think about asking for help. And so I just started to, you know, I basically had a nervous breakdown, not because I was working so hard, but because I was so ashamed that I wasn't good, that I wasn't capable, or I didn't feel capable. And so rather than asking for help or figuring out another way to do it, I went to see the dean to sort of, I was at a loss of what to do at that point. And I'd been really sick mentally and physically. And And he said to me, why don't you just, you're doing all these geography classes. You seem to be getting A's in those. Why don't you just do what you like? Do the classes that you enjoy. And that had never been an option for me. And so, again, listening to wisdom, he spoke wisdom to me and I heard it. I heard that it was okay to let go, to not know the path. And at that point in time, human geography and cultural geography did not really look like it had a lot to do with healing and all of that. But it was what made sense at the time. And I'm so grateful. Like, I even went on and did a master's in it and got a master's in cultural geography. And I'm so grateful that I had that life experience. But I knew at that point, when it looked like, are you going to go on and do a PhD, or are you going to do something else? I knew at that point, it's like, no, I want to get back to working with people. And maybe I'm not going to be a doctor, but maybe I'll be an acupuncturist. I'd started doing all kinds of different healing modalities at that point, and meditation and yoga. And so all of that allowed me to open up to this new path in life that I could never have imagined for myself. I grew up with a mother who I think is probably described as an atheist. And so that was sort of not on my radar. I'd only been exposed to Western medicine. I'd never imagined that I would be open to that. By going to Guatemala and getting sick with parasites and coming back to Canada and being told I was fine, and me knowing I was not fine because I didn't feel fine. And so again, I had to listen to that knowing, and I had to I didn't have to, but I chose to follow, like Kirk shared with his amazing story, like just listening and allowing. So I know there's been so many beautiful words shared today, and so much pointing to this space of knowing within ourselves. But really, it's that what matters is your experience of that space. It's not an intellectual space. Doesn't matter how smart I am, how many A's I got. That kind of knowing does not help me when it comes to listening to call your mom, Rohini. And we all have it, you know. Little 13-year-old Rohini had it. I didn't know it was wisdom, but I knew it was clear. And it's there for us. It's what carries us forward. And it can be, I think for myself, sometimes, especially when I was younger, it would take difficult circumstances to get me to really listen. Like, I remember one time I was coming into the US with a visa legally, and there was a administrative error where it wasn't stamped in my passport. It was in my hand, and they said they were going to deport me, and I had to go to INS jail overnight. And I was in my 20s. It was like the end of the world, and I was falling apart. And in that moment, I just remembered prayer. And like Linda said earlier today, devotion. I just asked God for help in that moment. And just like Angus shared in his experience, I just felt peace, and I fell straight to sleep. And then the next morning, fortunately for me, the guards came and said that my lawyer had called the office, and they realized it was a mistake and they were going to let me go. But I was okay with having to get shipped out, and I knew that I was going to figure it out if I had to go wherever they were going to send me. But now it's much easier to not just wait for those intense moments where it feels like I have no other choice but to listen. Now it's so much easier. And I think this is a lot to do with the slowing down, to just know that that's the direction that I want my inner ear turned to. And that it might not require everybody to slow down, but it kind of did require me to slow down. And I felt really guilty. It was funny how guilty I felt, feeling good, enjoying doing nothing, not really inspired to do the things that I would normally be doing, reading a book, writing, creating something. I didn't want to do any of it, but I didn't feel depressed. I felt really good, but I felt, my God, am I retired? Like Angus in his early retirement, like maybe I'm retired. And it's just like, oh no, this is my program. And so my invitation to all of you is to find whatever that is for you. And maybe yours is to go super fast right now. I don't know what it looks like for anybody else other than for me in this moment. But you know how to listen. You know how to pay attention. So I know I've only got a couple minutes left, but if anybody would like to, do I have a couple minutes left, Isla?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Take your time.
yeah, no, I just
I'll
wanted
Tibetan value.
yeah.
Yeah, really, you do. Yeah, 5 to
Yeah,
10.
no, I just wanted to just give us all a moment to breathe. And if there's anybody that feels called to share anything, to please feel free to share. But to just let yourself feel what's true, feel what's alive, feel what is more real than anything else, but can't really be described or communicated very effectively, at least by me.
Bella,
Hey,
when you
Bella.
share, yeah, and go ahead and unmute yourself. I think, yeah, thank
Hi, can you hear me?
you. Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, I just arrived not long ago, but it's I can really relate to what you're sharing because I've been, I'm gonna say, recovering and um healing from an illness, and I'm actually gonna need double hip surgery. I'm laughing about it, but it wasn't funny. For a while I went through crying and stuff, and but last year I did yoga therapy, and I'm doing yoga therapy now to get ready for the surgery. And what reminds me about the slowing down, I was already going really slow. And at the time when I started my yoga therapy, she goes, I want you to consider going like slower than you're going. And my osteopath at the time also told me the same thing. And at the next session, I told her, I said, for 3 days, I was like resisting. How much slower can I go? I'm already going slow like a slug. I can, barely walk with like 2 sticks, and so yeah, so it's really interesting. And I find like if I even try, if I say go a little bit faster, like I'm gonna say my hip area and like my muscles, like they like tighten up, like they kind of like go into like a little, like, what are you doing? You know? So it's really interesting, and I'm embracing more and more, like slowing even more down than I was already going, and I've actually listened to some, either reels or like short podcasts or like little messages, and and like some of the messaging that I heard was that sometimes in order to heal, you do need to slow down. Like, because if you don't, like, they don't say if you don't, but I'm adding that bit, like, because if you don't, like, like, I feel like I'm basically hindering my body from like healing and moving forward. And, like, and I've got like a lot of help and a lot of wisdom and knowledge from individuals that surround me in my circles, that be at the therapeutic pool, and my friends, my family, my son, like, it's just amazing. And how it and then to ask for help, or like to accept help. um and for the first time, and I'm gonna find out, in another week I'll be doing some more like blood tests, but like in April, for the first time in 9 years, like my inflammation markers were in the normal range.
Wow.
I was like shocked, like I you know went into this system and looked, and I go, okay, I gotta look at this again. Is this real? Like, I was like, it was so surreal, like uh because it had been like, it's been 9 years. So it's like, yeah, it was like surreal, like, and when a few things get better, like I get excited, but I try not to get like overly excited. Maybe you could like, you know, talk about that. But like I try not to get like overly excited just in case, it's like just temporary, maybe, like, or something like that. I'm not sure. So
Mm.
yeah, I just wanted to share that. Thank
Oh,
you.
thanks, Bella. And I love how you're listening to your wisdom. That's beautiful, the body, how it communicates that. Mm. Well, thank you, everybody. So grateful to be here with all of you and to get to share in this experience.
Thank you, Rohini.
Mm.
It's really, thank you for all that you put into helping set this up too.
You're welcome, Myla.
I felt, yeah, so supported and yeah, thank you.